This last incident is something that's had an effect on me ever since. My senior year, which was 1998, the year I graduated, the choir would put on a Broadway concert at the end of the year, which would be show tunes, basically. You know, choirs would sing and there would be choreography and a whole choir things where it was like unified choreography, and then there were solos in between. And I wanted to try out for a solo because I wanted to finish high school with a bang, you know, something memorable, something for them to look at me and think that I was great at something. But the choir teacher didn't like me because I wasn't one of the rich kids. She wouldn't do anything if girls would bully me in class. You know, she would just kind of half-heartedly say, "Please stop it, be quiet." The tune I wanted to try out with was Memory from Cats. And I knew the song because I had memorized it from hearing the Barbra Streisand version. But when we would do the concert, people would sing to a piano. And I would not be able to mentally figure out what I'm doing to completely new instrumentation. You know, it's one of those things where if I learn it one way, I have to do it that way over and over, or else I get very lost. Unless you reteach me it the new way. So music like that, you know. So I had my little tape recorder and I had the score for the music, and I would ask the choir teacher, "Could you please record the accompaniment for me so that I could practice at home, so I can make sure I get this solo right?" And she'd be like, "Oh, sure, sure." And she would sit down to do it, but as soon as other girls came up to talk to her, or other students, you know, she would stop to talk to them, and then I would have to leave because the bell would ring. I would try all kinds of different times a day, always the same thing. I was never important enough. So the day of the audition, I knew that I wasn't ready, but I thought, oh, maybe I can wing it, maybe. And of course we had to write down our name and our note card on a note card and the tune we were doing, and she would shuffle them, so you never knew when you were next. So you never had any real like mental preparation to say, okay, these two kids are in front of me, okay, now this kid, now this kid. No, it's just they call your name and it's like you gotta jump up and go. I mean, that's pretty hellish as it is. But the day of this audition, you know, I was doing this in front of peers who wanted me to fail because they didn't like me, and this teacher didn't like me either. So I put my score down on the piano and I stood up kind of next to the piano where everybody else would stand, and the pianist, she started to play. And I kind of recognized it, but it didn't make sense to me because it wasn't a guitar and other instruments, so it sounded wrong to me. Even though it was playing exactly the same notes, it sounded wrong. And I couldn't find my starting pitch. And it was basically like those auditions on American Idol that go really bad. Except this wasn't funny and it wasn't a joke. I had been set up to fail. And I was in front of a whole bunch of people that wanted me to fail, and they thought it was hilarious. I had my eyes closed, and my whole body was shaking. You could just see me going like this. I mean, there was no way you could not see me shaking. I mean, just like a little chihuahua. And I would open my eyes and I could see people just looking at me with hate and amusement. I could just feel it coming off of them while I was trying to sing. And I was singing, I was dragging the tempo because I was lost. I was completely lost. And it looked like I'd never sung the song in my life, even though I could do it a cappella like that. But what I remember the most is the teacher. I remember her face going like, she was, I don't know if my face is reflecting what I'm trying to express, but it's like she would start to smile and then like force herself not to, because she was supposed to look professional or whatever, but she was just staring at me like, and I could hear the noises of people trying to keep their laughing quiet. I could hear like, I could hear those kind of noises. Super autistic hearing. So I could hear them laughing and giggling and stuff like that very quietly. And she turned off the tape recorder because she was tape recording everybody's audition, and she just turned it off and said, "Just sit down. You're wasting my time." Very unsympathetic, very aware of the fact that her lack of help led to me failing like this. And there was a brief burst of laughter when I just walked over to the piano and quietly picked up my score. Very deadpan. I just felt like I was made of wood. Like I wasn't even a person. And nobody was allowed to leave after their auditions. You had to stay for all of them. So I sat there for another hour and a half, maybe. I'm not sure. It seemed like a long time. Just wishing that my attempt to swallow Benadryl had succeeded. Even though it was 2 years after that, every day I would wish that I was not alive. I would wish that I didn't exist. And there it was worse than the actual day when I tried to kill myself. I just wanted to, disintegrate, disappear, and just fade from memory. Now I listened to all these other auditions, and there were some that were about better than mine, a lot better, and there were some that were amazing. And I could hear the girls behind me whispering about how much I sucked, which I deserved. I felt like I deserved it, because I sucked as a person and at living and existing, and now I sucked at singing too. Even though singing was the one thing I actually loved and enjoyed in school, now that had been taken from me too. I had nothing. Nothing left. Nothing that had not been made fun of, or hated, or giggled about, or laughed about. Nothing. Every aspect of me was an object of ridicule. Everything. Everything! And when the audition was over, I remember it was raining. I didn't even put on my coat. I just walked out there and got soaking wet because it was like a downpour, downburst type of rainstorm. It was massive rain. And I walked all the way to the payphones and I called my mom crying and I said, "Get me out of here." I didn't even say hello, I just said, "Get me out of here," and I hung up. And I waited out there in the rain. I was drenched. Like, I was so drenched, even my underwear were wet from the rain. I was just soaked. My hair was stuck to me, and my backpack was soaking wet, but it was one of those plasticky feeling ones, so the water just kind of ran off it. But I was soaked to the bone and shivering, because I was hoping I would get pneumonia and die. Really. That's what I was hoping. When my mom took me home, she asked me how to go, and I just looked at her just like, no. And I held it in until I got home into my room, and then I just started crying. I had a humongous, crying meltdown. I tore my room apart. I was just yanking things off the shelves. I was screaming. I had one of those pedestal fans. I picked it up and I threw it out the door, and I slammed the door, and I was kicking things. I pulled my mattress off of the bed frame. I tried to rip my blinds off of the wall, but off the window on the wall where they're attached, but I couldn't get them down. But I ripped my curtains down. I took all of my stuffed animals that were on the curtain rod, and I just was pulling them down and throwing them around the room. I took all my books out and I threw them everywhere. I took everything out of my closet and I threw it on the floor. And in between, I was screaming, I want to die. Please, God, kill me. I want to die. I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be alive anymore. I don't want to be this person anymore. Why did you put me here if all people do is hate me and treat me like crap? And of course, I got in a whole bunch of trouble for tearing my room apart, but I didn't care. I just quietly picked it all up and put everything back in order, with my dad glaring at me. The next day I went to school acting like nothing was wrong. First period was choir class, and some of the girls came up behind me and they started imitating the scared way I was singing, all breathy and shaky, and then they would burst out laughing and say, "My God, you can't sing. You got the worst singing voice I have ever heard. You're a terrible singer. You're a horrible person. You shouldn't exist." And I didn't say anything back because I didn't care to fight back. But, when they started to push me a little bit, I turned around and I said, F you, stop telling me what I already know. And, of course, I got in trouble for swearing in class. Every time I got bullied and would fight back, I would get in trouble for fighting back, and the bullies got off scot-free. And that was no different. I didn't care anymore. And every day those girls would say that to me. They would tell me my voice was terrible. I started to hate singing. And singing was the one thing I loved to do. And it is the one thing I love to do most. But they almost took it from me. Of course, they probably just thought they were just being funny, but, they had no indication of what I had been through and what I was still going through inside. Bullies never think of that. They just need that cheap thrill of a laugh by hurting somebody else. They don't care if they're adding more to what that person's already going through. They don't care. If they cared, they wouldn't do it. At the Broadway concert, when we were on stage performing, everything was fine, but, I found that I almost lip-synced through most of it because I figured, well, my voice is so terrible, I shouldn't ruin the choir by singing. So I lip-synced most of it. I didn't even really sing. The last song I did sing because, I wanted to do the last song actually singing just to remind myself of what a piece of crap singer I am. That was at the time. When I say that, it's at the time, not now. And that was the choir incident. And from that time on, I had such horrible stage fright that I could not bear to stand up in front of anybody and sing alone. For a long time, I hated my singing voice. I joined the Catholic Church in 2001, and I went right to the church choir. Because I just wanted to sing. And I figured if there is no auditions, then maybe nobody will really notice how bad my voice is and what a terrible singer I am. And, maybe I'll find some kind of joy in this.